my niece, Laura Balboni. Laura attended the Peabody Institute of Music at Johns Hopkins, specializing in the viola. She is also known on the Cape for her artistic talents. Her studio is at the Harwich Cultural Center, and her works can be seen at Aries East Gallery on Route 6A in Brewster. So today we'll enjoy a combination of these talents as Laura presents Play a Painting, Paint a Symphony.
Hi everyone. I just want to get to know my audience and see who here is a musician. Raise of hands. What instruments?
Sax, accordion, and learning piano. Bit of drumming.
So it's jazz?
Amateur. I don't make any money doing it.
But
But mostly sax and a couple of bands.
Jazz or is it?
All sorts of music. A lot of jazz, but marches, some little classical.
Classical. And you?
I play the piano, not well. I've written some music. I used to be a singer and it was professional, but no voice anymore.
What kind of music?
My preference is always classical and symphonic, it's Baroque, and singing it's Baroque or opera. So anything.
That's very intense, opera. Wow. And there were some others. What was your instrument?
Piano and saxophone.
What kind of?
Mostly classical.
Classical.
Some like jazz and stuff.
Okay, and now artists in the room? Okay, what was your
painting
oil?
of landscape, which I cannot do anymore because of the time and effort it takes to really be part of that. But they're wonderful.
Wonderful. Okay, and you, the musician. Oh,
I used to be an avid sketcher.
yes.
Back in the days of radio, I would listen to Lux Radio Theater or whatever was happening in the evening with a sketch pad on my knee, drawing, always drawing.
Isn't that interesting?
But I never painted.
So that's a musician and an artist. Yes, and yourself? What were you painting?
Oh, I did not paint. I just
Well, art. I'm just asking who are the artists in the room. And what was your medium?
Done pretty much all of them, but mostly painting of all sorts and digital.
Okay, so a few people here. Now, a show of hands, there's usually a group that gravitates towards music and a group that gravitates towards art as something that moves them. So show of hands, who is more moved by music? And who is more moved by art? Were any of them the same? No, so it's funny, being a musician and an artist on the Cape, and there's such a great cultural history here, I don't find that the two communities overlap at all. The audience members for the Cape Symphony are different than the audience members for all the art receptions that I'm going to. So I was just interesting. I'm going to start, Aunt Diane, that's what I call her. She's my mother's brother's wife. So anyway, I grew up with her and I actually play viola at this church. I don't know if you've seen me for some of Donica Buckley's performances.
With Bob Marcus.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Right. I do some gigs around. I still play the viola around, and you'll see a few performances here. So she said, I have a degree from Peabody, which is a viola performance degree. It's very specific. And I had a few courses in art while I was there, but my music background was really intense until an injury forced me to look at my art as another option to express. I have no use of my wrists anymore from overusing them. Scooping ice cream when I was getting ready for a summer in Italy to play viola at chamber orchestra there, and it was a professional gig, and I was all excited. I was principal violist and everything, so I played all summer and then went back to Peabody, and the conductor wouldn't let me play. He's like, your hands are all swollen, you can't. So the doctors all said before I graduated that there's no way that I could actually go on and be a professional violist. So it was a pretty big dramatic point in my 20s. And so I went and married a Romanian violinist, and he soloed around the world. He actually played here at this church. He won the Fritz Kreisler, the Paganini. So I was involved in his life for a while as his promoter, and then dabbled in art and had kids, and then decided, oh, I'm going to paint now, because the people on the Cape really love nature, and I was able to capture pretty quickly a scene. So for tourists, I would make these quick paintings, and actually Aunt Diane brought one of my very earliest landscapes over there. Actually, my first year of painting 10 years ago, a scene from Provence. We'd all been to Provence together. So that's how it all started. I actually didn't have any training. I just had a knack for it, and went from pastel to oil. And I guess my background. Oh, so I don't know anybody. Does anybody know George Shar? He's the principal trombone of the Cape Symphony. He's right there, in the bottom right corner. He does a lot of outreach lectures for the Cape Symphony. If you go to Snow Library before the concerts, he'll speak. Anyway, he heard me play viola solo somewhere and came up afterwards like out of a movie and handed me a business card and said, I'm the director at the Cape Cod Conservatory. Would you like to come teach? So 20 years ago, I started teaching pretty fast. My degree at Peabody did come in handy for that reason. So I've been teaching there, and I was like, oh, I play viola. I also paint. And I'm doing both right now. Maybe I should teach a course called Play a Painting, Paint a Symphony. And I got really involved in that because I had a similar course at Peabody. I had a 6-foot timeline of all the art history and the music history lined up together so you could see what overlapped. And I had a couple of videos to go along with it, and I actually made a concert where I was hired, some other musicians came and they were professional, and I had some artists painting in the audience, and I also had some of my artwork there, and I performed at 820 Main Gallery here in Harwich, a concert called Play a Painting, Paint a Concert, mixing the two, because I'm like, wow, this is so cool. This whole story, it just blossomed from this weird beginning with this injury. So before I go on, I'm just going to give you a sample of my playing. For my 40th birthday, I gave a gift to myself to do a recital with professional musician Anne-Francois Perrault. And this is not a public video. You can't see it because it's not perfect. It gives you a sense. you a sense of my training and what transpired. So that was 6 years ago. I'm 46, and from there, my teaching at the Cape Conservatory got me a lot of nice gigs. I decided to try and mix the art more with the musicians more, and this is the result of that. That gives you a sense of the progression. I decided to invite my artist friends to my studio for a modeling session where this was set up so that I could make a self-portrait, but I had my artist friends there in case they wanted to paint a model playing an instrument. And then it was the start of a series called The Portrait Exchange, where we painted each other, all these artists, famous artists, Andrea Petito, Susan Overstreet, Steve Kennedy, decided to all join me in this venture, and we didn't have to pay the model because we were the models. So every Friday we'd do that, we'd go out to dinner, we'd have drinks, it was very nice and social, but that was the start of that. And this is Steve Kennedy's version from that sitting. And I want to point out that this is, it became like a project for the rest of Cape Cod painters to try and paint musicians. They got really interested because I would bring members of the Cape Symphony to my studio and say, here, this is a musician, paint him. And then meanwhile, ask him questions. And the artists would go around and ask, the musician, the model, would go around and ask the artists as the painting progressed questions. So they intimately got to know each other. And that's a series that's ongoing now called Face the Music Portraits. And you can see these are mine, but there were 48 artists participating in a big showing at the Cultural Center 5 years ago. And we'll do it again with even larger numbers of artists because now we have more symphony members. There's 13 total from the Cape Symphony that have participated in my Face the Music series. And we have Bo Eriksen next. I don't know if you all know him. Yes, and a luthier, and so he combines music and art and science and math. And his new passion, well actually old passion, he's been a luthier all this time, making violins, fixing violins, violas, cellos, and bows. So it's funny, his name's Bo and he's fixing bows. And there's another painting in the room that is not mine. It's Susan Overstreet, who is one of my biggest, I just love her and her art. She's like the Van Gogh, female Van Gogh of Cape Cod, and she participated in one event where I actually had a whole orchestra as the model, and I invited my artists to come to that, and she painted that from that session. I was in the background painting a seascape, and actually it was bought by the principal flutist, Pam. By the end of the concert, she was like, I must have this sunset. So that's a very music and art mix right there. Pam Sears on the top right. So to visualize, I have a really great video that Steve Kennedy took of Eleanor Hilly Blake, one of the cellists from the Cape Symphony. And he actually was able to record her playing and all the artists painting at the same time. Yeah, and it goes on, and it was an 18th century cello, and the barn was the Geyer barn in Hyannis, and it was a really beautiful moment. And actually I have another snippet from that 3-hour modeling session. She didn't stop playing. And the cool thing was, because she plays in the Boston Philharmonic too, and the Cape Cod Chamber Orchestra, she said the night before, no problem, I'll be there, I just have to super glue the cracks on my fingers. Dedication. Sorry for the delay. Cape Cod Art Salon is what I called my little place and my group to host all these Face the Music portraits. And the symbol is right there for the Cape Cod Art Salon, that star. It's not just a normal color grid star, it's by Johannes Itten, who is a 1920s colorist, and he actually came up with a spiritual interpretation of colors that actually overlapped with music, and that really resonated with me because I've seen some artists utilize this color star and his color chords. And he calls them chords because he uses colors like he would use notes. And a chord is more than one note. It's usually 2 or 3 or 4. And the way it physically goes over that star is called the Itten color chords. So you would place one of these circles and use one of his chords with the colors that you were choosing. And they would have sort of a musical vibrancy to them that would make harmonic sense. So the Cape Cod Art Salon, I've been doing a lot with them, and I call myself the host, the salonier. This is a sample of me painting. She plays the whole time, even with cracked fingers. And that leads me to another happenstance. The actor Dermot Mulroney from many movies like The Wedding, I don't know, the one with Julia Roberts, and he's in Shameless. Anyway, he played for Paul Schulenberg's group, one of my participants, and Paul Schulenberg asked me to get a cello because Dermot Mulroney just played with the Boston Symphony. He happens to play the cello just as well as he acts. And he's in a lot of movie soundtracks. So here is Dermot Mulroney playing while we paint him. And there's my final piece. This example. And the Schulenberg group that paints every Wednesday in East Can have followed my music and art series, and then I was asked to paint the Cape Cod Chamber Orchestra and do a piece in response to their first opening composer, which was Eldar de Moore. And so I have that video as well, just a snippet. Matt Cinto is actually going to be the next lecture, one of the lectures that is coming up. And you're right in speaking, Matt Cinto. I thought he was one of the guest speakers coming up. That painting that was behind the orchestra was my piece that I created for that music. And then I painted live the orchestra. That's not finished. That was just how it looked at the end of the concert. And that is a fundraiser that I'm going to do. When I finish that, it'll be donated proceeds to the Cape Cod Chamber Orchestra, because I just love that orchestra. And Matt actually loved the painting so much that his wife Kara bought it for him for Christmas. So it hangs over their fireplace. Very romantic. So then the last thing that happened that's most exciting was the Cape Symphony. I don't know if you were there for the Beethoven on the Cape concert. The opening had like visual aids, and mine was one, so I brought it here tonight. If you saw the Beethoven on the Cape, you might recall that one. That was, Jung Ho Pak asked me to give him a bunch of seascapes of mine, if he could fit Beethoven 6 to one of them. So I gave him about 20 to choose from, and that's the one he chose. Yeah, and so the orchestra was playing for the whole first movement, and the painting was up on the screens to flank either side of the orchestra. So that was a big moment for me, and which also led me to another career change. I'm now painting weddings live, and so I go on location and I paint weddings. And I have a booklet over there, and these are some in-progress ones. Those are the past couple of months. They're not finished, but I thought I'd bring them anyway to show you. Did we go over the time limit? No, we're good. Because I wanted to show you some of my wedding paintings. This is kind of a beautiful marriage of music and art, because I'm performing when I'm in the wedding. With all the DJ and everybody set up, it's all very nerve-wracking. And I'm there for the first dance or for the vows or whichever scene they want painted. And they see the whole painting progress during the wedding. So by the end of the wedding, they see a pretty good capture of what I'm going to give them. But then I spend hours and months on finalizing it. So yes, I meet with them before. And I ask them, do you want to have a pose, or do you want to be candid? And I choose. Mostly they want the first dance. So here's some video of that. I don't think I'll put the audio. I'll talk about it. Those are Witchmere Heart. No, those were Closet. Setting up for that. Kind of out of order, but really at that point, they wanted a blue sky, but it was gray that day, so I painted the day before and put them in. That was in New Hampshire. This is just the location of where the wedding was. That was Requasset, and up close detail. That's how it looked that day. That was, I guess I can't talk because it goes too fast. present. So I take the wedding painting very seriously now, and I'm booked already into next summer, and I'm hoping this will be steady work for me, as well as the corporate portraits that I do and the sweepstakes at Eriksen Gallery. That was a hurricane in the morning, that one. And fear waves. And that was not finished at this one. Had to barge in. So that was Witchmere Harbor Club, that was Newport, Rhode Island. They had a smoke machine. Yeah, the bride seeing the painting at the end of the night. Yeah, you get the sense. Thank you, started again. I guess that's all. Any questions for me? Yes. They're the same, they're under the neck, but the cello strings are the same as the viola strings. So the Bach cello sweeps that you heard on the cello also go on the viola just the same. It's just very deep sounding violin. And yeah, they say it's the closest one to the human voice. It's the alto in the chorus. So it doesn't have that high string, the E string that the violins have, but it adds the lower string, the C string that the cellos have. Okay. Yes, viola instruction. Yeah, any age, any range. Yes, for 10 years now. It's been very rewarding. Because I had so much great training. Oh my goodness, to have it go to waste. I played viola in Finland, in Spain, Canada, and I was very ready to go play at the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields in England, and that was the track. And I made it. The art? I've had to. In fact, that's like, I think that was probably why I was a very effective viola one-on-one instructor, because I definitely use the analogies with colors and rhythm and sound with things that were visual for me. So, yeah, a lot of overlap there in my private instruction. And then, as I said, I had that course, play a painting, paint a symphony, for young adults, but it could go for adults, certainly, someday. Again, I have it all ready, so it's there if you just request it. Yeah. Maybe I'll make it into a YouTube movie video, and then people can just watch it. Yeah. That's probably what I'll do. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm like thinking, how can I get everyone to see this? I think that's a great idea. Thank you. Anybody learn anything that they want to share from this lecture? That's an interesting question that you asked, because just tonight we've seen, or today, God, it's only lunch, that we have some people in the audience, but the classical music world is so intense, and the art world is so intense. It's usually from injuries. It's like there was another violist that had some nerve damage that he paints portraits over in Washington State, and someone put us together. But I haven't seen it a lot. And it's a frustrating thing, because I see from the eye point of a musician and the eye point of an artist, and I know they're so similar. So when we had these models come and share the 3 hours with these very professional painters of Cape Cod, and they started looking at each other's lives, they saw how very similar and overlapping. And Paul Schulenberg got an invitation. The concertmaster, Jay Cosmos, he said his mother was an artist, and that's why he agreed to model for me, he had sympathy for artists, and he is the concert founder of the Far Cry, which is the chamber orchestra, official chamber orchestra of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. So he has married the two beautifully. So those concerts shouldn't be missed. And he is amazing. He's also the concert master of the Boston Philharmonic. So he has two big jobs. And I asked him, I said, what would you do if you didn't do the violin? What career would you pick if you couldn't play? And he said, golf. And I said, well, what is it like to be the principal, the concert master of the Cape Cod Symphony? And he said, it's an adrenaline rush, and it makes you so present in the now. And that's the beautiful thing, because when I paint, it's a very long process. Some of them take months. But yet I can still look at it now. And the only way you can see that hour-long performance I gave when I was 40 with those professional musicians are snippets from YouTube. But the audience members afterwards came over to me and said, you know, this really moved me and I'm going to remember this for a long time. And I was like, okay. So it was worth $150. 4 months of training. But actually I have another snippet of that book romance. Since I have your attention, we can leave with this. You can walk around, and I highly suggest taking my flyers, or anyone's welcome to my thank you cards with the portrait of JFK. They're on that table there. I brought them for everybody as a parting gift for listening. But here is the Brook romance number 3, and this is very meaningful to me because it's an actual fight between two people, and at the end it resolves. But it tears your heart out. It's just so passionate. Okay. His name is Henry Duckham, and he was a music critic for the Boston Globe or the New York Times or something, and got his master's at New England Conservatory. And that's Anne Francois Perot, who is the former head of the department at Boston School in Boston. I mean, I can keep it playing after while we're leaving, but that was a romance that was by a very special composer like Brahms in that same time frame, but he didn't compose much. And that's another thing with art and music. It's similar that some artists spend a ton of time reworking, doing a ton of work. You work on one or two pieces, and you don't have that many paintings of them. Same thing with composers. There are composers like Brooks that have these gems, but they didn't compose that many. You wish they had more. And Brahms, he's got 3 symphonies, and Mozart's in the 800s. So it's Brahms, he kept working and working and reworking to say one is less than another. But now with art, I'm noticing I'm taking more time with my paintings, and some of my colleagues go very fast. So I think I'm going to be one of those Brahms ones. my wedding business, I'm able to do about 6 a year because I take a long time right now. But my goal is to do about a dozen a year. And to do a corporate portrait, I'm working on the president of Assumption College, and that's taken me 5 months so far. So, yeah, same thing with musicians. Video and snapshots, and I'm there, and I hear the wedding speeches, and I hear the different story backgrounds of each of the couples, the bride and the groom, so it's like I'm getting really to know the couple in a whole way. And the moment that I think is most romantic is the one I choose for the painting of the first dance. And the composition, we determine a little bit beforehand, but I have to do a lot there because the florist isn't there yet, and you have to really figure out how this is going to look at the end of the day. When I start at 10 a.m., usually about 4 is when they do their first dance, so I have a lot of time to figure how the whole painting will look, and then that is the painting. There is no moving around, because I want them to have a piece of the live day. I think it's, yeah, that's what I want to be, a little bit different. Other wedding painters that are currently professionals in the business do a kind of caricature of the whole entire wedding party. If you can see on the table, that one there is 30, I think it's about 12 figures, or 20, I don't remember, there's a lot of figures in there, and I was like, this is too much. You know, if you're going to do a portrait and really make it look like the person, you need time. And besides which, you're going to immortalize all the members of the wedding audience. You know, some people you'll want to have forever in your portrait. So that's a thing to consider too. Because it lives free for a while on that wall. And that's the difference, you know, with a videographer or a photographer. You just put these wedding albums away, or you press play for the video. Painting on the wall will be there in your bedroom or across your fireplace, you know, forever to see and look at that day. So it becomes an heirloom. And I make the prints and the thank you cards from it, all from my original, and they can keep that. So if you have any nieces, nephews, grandkids, I'm CapeCodWeddingPainter.com, and I'm on the Knot, and you can always find me from Aunt Diane. And I hope you learned a lot about music and art today, and kind of have an appreciation for both.
It was surprising with your comment that they don't tend to overlap, like you're either a musician or an artist. So it's going through my head, all the musicians I know, all the artists I know, and very few do, you know, both mean them.
Yeah, it usually is an injury or something that's caused it to happen. Bo Eriksen, I was at his luthier office, whatever, where he does his fixing the other day, and I was looking at him. He's got his Courant, some Bach suites on the floor, and he's practicing, and he's fiddling with instruments, he's making violins, and I'm thinking, and he said to me, your viola bow, I got fixed by another luthier, and he's like, it's too long when you undo it. I'm a musician, and I know that the balance has to be just right, so because I'm a musician, I'm able to be a better luthier and fix your bow. So there's that. I mean, there's layers of a personality. I had no idea Bo was so artistic, because he showed me his violins off the wall, and they had beautiful scrolling, and the sound was so easy. He made my viola easier to play, because he knew how to fix it so the strings weren't too far off the fingerboard, where they had to really work hard because they were too high from the other luthier who fixed it, who wasn't a musician. So, yeah, no, art and music doesn't normally overlap. And the reason is, you saw a show of hands. Somebody usually likes art, and somebody usually likes music or moved. And I just happen to be moved by both and have an affinity for both. And it was a dichotomy, actually. My art teacher was like, why don't you go into art? And I'm like, I'm in 3 orchestras and a quartet at New England Conservatory. I have a full track. I'm going to be a violist. So I had that option, you know, my words from my art teacher saying, you could be an artist, you know. And so thank God I had that as a backup plan, because it was a devastating, still is, tragedy that I can't be in it. I couldn't go to the Cape Symphony because I cried the whole time. Because I know the pieces, I know every note, I know who comes next, I know, you know, I'm always on the stage, never in the audience. So it's bittersweet. But being there for this Beethoven on the Cape, their first night with the debut of their monitors, and Jung Ho Pak picking my painting. No, I didn't know it was going to be the first one. Opening chords of the Beethoven Sixth, a piece I've played 3 or 4 times with orchestra, and my painting, and he kept it there the whole first movement, and he would go in and out with visuals of the orchestra or him conducting, but they would always go back to that because it matched what he thought was the first movement. So I was like, oh, I'm healed. I'm fine now. This is a full circle. And he's interested in having my portraits at one of his concerts to somehow collaborate my view. And I call it Face the Music because of a lecture he gave at the Cape Cod Museum of Art, saying, you don't know any of our musicians. They're a sea of black uniforms. Nobody knows the humans in the orchestra. So I said, I'm going to make them know the humans by putting them in a painting. So each of these paintings I'm giving to the artist as my thank you for modeling for free. So these are real, and now my portraits start at $2,500, so they're gifts to them. So, and I'm going to continue with Bo and his wife Liz. They're going to play together. How romantic! They have a business where they play at weddings. The cello duo, professional cello duo, and they're man and wife, and they're playing for a wedding, going down the aisle and being at that thing. I mean, how romantic can that get? So, yeah, that's a couple I want to have in a painting. I want to help his business. By the way, if you know anybody getting married, they're a great duo for weddings. So, anybody else learn anything that they want to share? Oh, good. Full accomplished. Thank you. And you can take a look at the different visuals.